Hi everyone, good morning. My name is Rachel Ralston, and today I'd like to talk to you about food waste, but before I go into that subject, I'd like to talk about how everyone here in this room is lucky enough to live in a country where food is plentiful. That's what we've always been told, right? That's what we were always told, and I'm sure that my parents weren't the only ones to insist that the starving children of various third world countries would give anything for my food scraps. There's some merit to this perspective because the US is far, far, far from being the hungriest of the world's nations. However, despite this, according to an economic research report by the USDA, 10.5% of US households were food insecure at some point during 2020, mine included. And if we take a look to see how we compare to other countries in this category, this graph depicts the share of yes responses to the question, have there been times in the last 12 months where you did not have enough money to buy food that you or your family needed? This poll was conducted by the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development in 2011, and as you can see, the results are less than ideal. The USA is substantially hungrier than even mid-ranking nations like Spain, Canada, and the Czech Republic. So this is where we would want to be. Wait, no. This is where we want to be. Beautiful, less hunger. And that red line is where we are. So what gives? And is food actually scarcer in America than we thought? Many different factors contribute to food insecurity. Factors like residence, poverty levels, and more. But there's still an invisible elephant in the room. That elephant is food waste. So how much food do we actually waste? We discard more than any other country in the world. We discard nearly 40 million tons, or 80 billion pounds per year. We ranked just above Poland in yes responses, which implies that we are hungrier as a nation, but Poland wastes 31 million tons less than we do annually. For over a decade, UA anthropologist Timothy W. Jones traced the path of food products, and he estimated that the average family of four tossed out $590 per year in meat, food, vegetables, and other products. As one might expect, wastefulness to this degree being ingrained in our culture comes with consequences. Researchers Kevin D. Hall, Jet Nguo, Michael Dorr, and Carson C. Cho studied the progressive increase of food waste and its environmental impact, and the data that they reported is startling. Given that the average farm requires 3 kilocalories of fossil fuel energy to produce 1 kilocalorie of food, wasted food accounts for 300 million barrels of oil per year, representing 4% of the total US oil consumption in 2003. In addition to this wasteful consumption of fossil fuels, food waste rotting in landfills produces substantial quantities of methane. So why is this the case, and how is this our normal? And if you had to guess, who would you say is the biggest contributor to food waste in the USA? It's an easy question, you might think, because how could any household be less sustainable than your local McDonald's? But in truth, the most wasteful of all three levels are we, the consumers. Are you surprised? Yeah, I was. Maybe I was even more surprised than you all were, just because my audience analysis survey results were astonishingly accurate. 20% of this class here blamed the industrial level, and the rest was evenly split between the commercial and consumer levels, this graph here. But the second graph, this represents real data, information gathered by the nonprofit organization Feeding America, where they deduced the following. 2% of America's food waste occurs during manufacturing. 16% occurs on the farm, so the industrial level produces 18% total. Restaurants, grocery stores, fast food, etc., which is the commercial level, accounted for 40%. And we, the consumer level, accounted for the remaining 42%. You can see these statistics visualized in the second graph, which I made myself in Google Forms. What causes this excess? And again, this is many reasons for that, but here are just a few. According to the Natural Resources Defense Council, a US-based 501 nonprofit international environmental advocacy group. Farmers grow too much as a hedge against uncertainty. More food is thrown out when distributors reject slightly bruised or misshapen fruits and vegetables. Grocery stores often overstock to keep displays looking bountiful. And consumers toss perfectly edible produce at home, often by mistake. Food waste now takes up more space in landfills than paper or plastic. And food waste, which accounts for 16% of America's environmentally unfriendly, harmful methane emissions, is more harmful than plastic waste because methane has 25% more warming potential than CO2. This doesn't mean we should focus solely on the commercial and consumer levels, though, because even though less waste occurs at the industrial level, sustainability is still not a priority to corporates, or that wastefulness is not encouraged by corporate practices. The NRDC's report also emphasizes issues like overproduction, product damage, lack of standardized date labeling practices, lack of cold chain infrastructure, rigid food grading specifications, and varying customer demand and market fluctuations. A key finding in this area was that distributors, food rescue organizations, and food service providers have a critical role to play in realizing solutions. What this means is that even though the consumer decides what gets thrown out and when, wastefulness is profitable for corporations as well. They have little to no reason to reduce food waste except for when the decision is marketable. So, if we cannot count on the industry to set new or lasting precedents, we can even make small, positive changes at home. It's easy, will benefit you, the environment, and your wallets. The first positive change has already occurred now that you've all learned about how extensive food waste is in our country, why it's happening, and why we should care. Now we need to talk about tangible solutions accessible to everyone in this room. The first solution is not to interpret Best Buy labels on food products before tossing food. You should determine whether you are referencing a Best Buy or a use by date, because plenty of food is edible past its Best Buy date. Use your senses like sight and smell, and be extra cautious with dairy, meat, or produce, because plenty of dry and canned goods are still okay to consume. Another tip is to pay attention to the fresh produce in your fridge, because we have all bought fruits and vegetables with really good intentions and ended up throwing them away in a matter of days because they spoil so fast. This is a first world problem born of instant foods and convenient snacking, but the solution is a lot easier than you might think. Just freeze it. Browning bananas, freeze them to make smoothies or banana bread. Spinach starting to wilt, freeze it and later add to omelets or pasta or like anything else you can think of. Being prepared and setting intentions for the food you buy will save you time and money. Lastly, stop shying away from leftovers. I am guilty of this too, extremely. To some, cold food looks and smells weird, and the process of reheating can be unappetizing because microwaves warm food unevenly. But soup, rice, pasta, and anything else you can think of practically can be frozen or refrigerated and later reheated on a stovetop. This includes leftover takeout, because if you've never reheated cold pizza in the oven before, I highly recommend it. It tastes like you just got it. Convenience is key when tackling the issue of food waste, so you will succeed more at wasting less if you adjust your eating habits to your preferences and lifestyle. Hopefully, I succeeded today in persuading you all that food waste is a major issue in the United States, as well as in providing solutions to help you decrease food waste in your own home. Before I conclude this speech, I would like to very briefly inform you about mottainai. It's a Japanese word meant to express a sense of guilt, regret, or sorrow felt for the act of wasting. Kanae Nakamine, full-time project manager at Tofugu, says that this is because not cherishing or making the most of things is disrespectful to spirits. Maybe not literally speaking in the modern era, but this tradition nonetheless instills a valuable lesson. Nothing exists on its own, and everything exists because of the support given by other things. Even a grain of rice on your plate wouldn't be there if it wasn't for the effort, time, people, and materials, the farmer, the land, the resources, that made it happen and eventually got the rice to you. You and your family worked really hard to earn money to purchase it, too. This indicates that the phrase mottainai also includes an amount of humbleness, gratitude, and the feeling that nothing should be taken for granted. We can all afford to incorporate this principle to our own lives and our food. Thank you.